Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic today is the U.S. colored troops and the Battle of Nashville. And of course we have with us to talk about the U.S. colored troops and the Battle of Nashville, Leo Kwame Lillard. And of course, Brother Lillard, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Glad to be here, Dr.
And
Haney.
I hesitated in terms of trying to identify you
because
there are so many names that we could use in terms of the kinds of situations that you've been involved in and your leadership and et cetera, that it's difficult to simply come up with one word to say that you are this, because you might be this at one moment and next time you're doing something entirely different. Let's give our audience an opportunity this first segment to find out more about some of the things that we're talking about now, about your involvement with whatever, by having you to talk about your background, your education, and some of the things that eventually led you to come here as a representative dealing with the U.S. colored troops and the Battle of Nashville.
Well, you know, I'm a Nashville boy. I went to Carter Lawrence Elementary School and Pearl High, and I got a degree in engineering at A&I in those days in 1961. And of course, because of my involvement in the civil rights struggle, I felt when I finished my degree in '61, and we had basically had victories in the sit-ins, the lunch counters, the sit-ins, the stand-ins. We integrated the movie theaters, integrated the swimming pools, and then of course the Freedom Ride. And I kind of felt it was time to outgrow Nashville. I got my degree from Tennessee State, and I wanted to see a bigger world, so I left here. Kind of chased out a little bit, encouraged to leave by the Klan. So I went to New York City and pursued other educational and primarily universal topics of struggle, injustice, oppression, and kind of broadened my view out about how we fitted in the whole scheme of things as African Americans on a global context. So I got kind of baptized into the radical Pan-African movement in Harlem by Malcolm X and James Baldwin and that whole 1960s intellectual international paradigm of struggle. And when I finished my degrees and had my children in New York City, I decided to come back home in '76. And when I came back home, of course, I was bristling with ideas and just running over with enthusiasm to continue the liberation struggle as opposed to the civil rights struggle. Now that might be very clear.
Good.
I'm way past civil rights, okay? I'm into liberation of humans, beings on the globe. There's a big difference in those concepts. So when I came back in '76, I needed to do something. I needed to use some of these skills at home, all this education, these 3 master's degrees I had. It's a lot of education. So I wanted to use it. So I began to search for a crucible, a vehicle in which to utilize some of these skills to continue the struggle here in Nashville. And I was a Capitol Hill Baptist Church member, so we started Young Adult Fellowship, and we went to TPS and adopted children, and then we dealt with the bust of Forrest that was being unveiled in November of '78, and the church had a protest downtown at the Capitol, and the rest is history. I just simply moved from there to finding organizations and finding coalitions that really wanted to create a different kind of awareness model for struggle, because it was clear our children and our adults had very little consciousness in the city. They were very satisfied with living in Hendersonville or Antioch, and they were not looking at the oppression that was occurring on our children, particularly in the public schools, where they were not teaching black history. We forced the court, through Wiseman, through a coalition of parents, black and white, to look at opening up the curriculum so all children could learn the correct history, not white history, not black history, but the correct history. So that's what I did in '79, '79, '80, '81. And then I realized, you know, that there still was something missing in this. We still hadn't opened up the issue of cultural identity. So we started the African American Cultural Alliance, and we're into our 24th year of having the only African festival on a black college campus in the entire United States.
Now this is the famous African Street Festival.
Yes, 24 years.
Every September at Tennessee State University.
That's right. It is the only one of its nature in the country.
And this is your 24th year in
coming up in
reference
September.
to
That's right. And we've outlasted, Dr. Haney, Black Expo, Summer Lights, Italian Street Festival. Now here Dancing in the District is no longer. So we have outlasted all of those major events on no money, no funding, no grants, and no government interference. So that speaks well of the folks who run this little tiny operation we have. But it speaks more of a city that supports what we do and how we do it. Because our formula is very simple. Give the people a major, true ethnic event that is free on a public university campus. That's a pretty simple formula. It's a tall order, though, because nobody's done it.
Okay, but you've been quite successful at it, and,
well,
and I can certainly attest
lots
to
of
that.
support from Nashville, black, white, everybody.
Very good. And of course, let us make preparations for this first commercial break, Brother Lillard.
Okay.
And then we'll be back and talk about some of the
Sure.
aspects. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The topic is the U.S. colored troops and the Battle of Nashville, and we're talking to Leo Kwame Lillard. And of course, Professor Lillard has been giving us quite a bit of information in reference to his background. But let us continue this and have you to give us some information about the participation of African Americans in the war that we will eventually dealing with the battle.
I'd be glad to, Dr. Haney. I think as a child growing up in Nashville, I lived in South Nashville, and we had to walk to Cameron Junior High School, which is another part of South Nashville. And we walked right past this huge old haunted-looking hill every day for 3 years. Had no idea that it was called Fort Negley. All we know was a place that our parents said, "Don't you go up there, boy. It's haunted. It's an Indian fort." Unbeknownst to all of us, and probably my parents too, that fort was and still is the largest stone fort ever built in the Civil War. Now, there's a long way from junior high school to now. And it took many years, even back in Nashville, before we realized the significance of that Fort Negley. Because it was a fort that reminded the Nashville gentry of defeat in the Civil War. Okay, but that fort was a sense of pride for black folks because we built it. We built it with our own hands. In fact, they forced black men who were bricklayers and stonemasons to build that fort. Nashville itself was a key city during the Civil War because it had all these railroads, and it was a border state. It was the last state to succeed during the Civil War. But it also allowed this city to become the launching area to supply the entire war effort that Lincoln needed to have to defeat the Confederate armies operating in Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi. Okay? So Nashville was occupied. It was only one of two cities occupied, Nashville and New Orleans. Only two cities occupied during the entire war, and became staging areas to defeat the Confederate Army. So this was a critical city for the Civil War. But more importantly, it also became a place to recruit black soldiers because all the slaves that wanted to join the Union Army had to come out of those southern states to get to Nashville to be recruited. And Tennessee had the second largest number of black recruits behind Virginia in the entire war, and also had the largest number of battles other than Virginia. So we played a major role. So it's odd that you grow up in a city, in a state, with that significant role, and as an educated person, you're black, you leave with a degree in whatever it is, and you don't know the role that Nashville played. So you wonder, how long could this lie be kept away from the people? Our job then became to expose the lies, to fill in the blanks in history, and say, we played a major role in making our country what it is. We didn't just do what's in the movie Gone with the Wind. And it's odd, Dr. Haney, that the stamp this year is Hattie McDaniels, the black stamp, and she played Mammy in Gone with the Wind. All right? All right? And it's odd that you would have that stamp come out the exact year we put a statue up that totally contradicts the stamp. I mean, the men who that statue is made for wasn't singing old Massa and singing, you know, we shall overcome. They were fighting for the rights of their freedom and the rights of a nation. And it's amazing it's taken that long to do that. So we're kind of proud of the fact that we can fill in those blanks and say we have a right to claim that this country belongs to us because we defended it with our blood. In the cemetery on Gallatin Road, Dr. Haney, there are 1,900 black men buried there from the Civil War who fought in the battles of Tennessee, and particularly the horrendous battle of Nashville.
Well, could you repeat that number there, because I mean that's
about 1,940 black men
that are buried there already in the
buried there in a section called United States Colored Troops. It is in the back of the cemetery next to Kmart on Gallatin Road. When you go under the train track, you turn left, and there you will find up on a hill 1,900 graves with the inscription USCT on the headstone. That signifies that they were Union soldiers of African descent. And they bled and fought bravely and defeated the Confederate Army. In fact, they defeated the last real army in the entire war that was effective. That caused the surrender of Lee, and to Grant, which ended the Civil War in favor of the Union Army. That's the importance of Nashville. That's the importance of Tennessee, and particularly that's the importance of the black men who wore the blue uniform. And they were, of course, probably ill-trained, the worst equipment, sacrificed on suicide missions, but they still went. And our children don't know that. And to see the folks who run around with Confederate flags say, this wasn't a war about slavery. If it wasn't a war about slavery, what was it about? What was it about? And we're just so proud that the Civil War stories that are coming out now, trying to fill in that gap and not make Gone with the Wind the only interpretation of that era in our country. And most of us as children, including myself and you too, until you were 20, 30 years old, you assumed that Gone with the Wind was correct. Come out of Hollywood, right? It was a wonderful movie, it was a classic, all right?
And it had a black actress, which was an extraordinary accomplishment at the time itself.
That's right. Who would ask questions? You know, why wouldn't you be proud of her? At least she got paid, you know, at least she was in the movie. But there were huge pieces of gaps, information. Until the movie Glory, I think most Americans didn't even know that black men fought.
You know, you mentioned sponsors and individuals who have played a significant role. We've got about 2 minutes. Why don't you say something about those individuals who played a crucial role in helping you to resurrect this whole idea and build this great statue that you put in the
Well, I think without the Tennessee Historical Commission, the historical commission that is a publicly funded operation, tax supported, Mr. Norman Hill, who was the first black elected chairman of the Tennessee Historical Commission, gave us the final money we needed to pay the foundry to cast the statue. But there are lots of people on this board here. You can see Mr. Barry Stokes from One Point Solutions. He gave $5,000. Okay, there are Mr. Stephen Turner, charitable foundation, $5,000. Al Berry, the former black chairman of the NES, very important person. Bell South, Dr. T.B. Boyd, $2,500. So these people here, Dana Foundation, Vernon Winfrey, Mr. Winfrey gave $1,000. We called him up and said, Vernon, we need to help us put this statue up there. He said, no problem, here's $1,000. So people, then we had lots of small donations. Some people gave as much as $2. Students at TSU gave $1. But it took all those students and all the people to put that $48,000 little nest egg together to get the statue.
And so the statue cost $48,000. That was the total price.
That's correct. But that's just the beginning. We still have promises to our major benefactors and major donors. We've got to honor those commitments by giving them some piece of artwork to say thanks for what you did. We committed to that. We have to maintain the statue.
Very
and
good.
most importantly, we got to advertise it.
Very good. And of course, what we'll do when we come back during this final segment, we'll talk about the Battle of Nashville and give you an opportunity to say some additional words in reference to some of the support that you need. Okay. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Kwame Leo Lillard, and the topic is U.S. colored troops and the Battle of Nashville. And of course, Brother Lillard, during this last segment, let's talk about the troops and the Battle of Nashville. And I think you've already indicated how significant Nashville was. But let's get into a discussion about the battle itself.
Okay. The battle occurred on two major days, December 15th, December 16th, 1864. Now, the war had been going on for 3 years at that point, 3 years. Lincoln had issued the proclamation, which is basically a thinly disguised draft for black soldiers.
Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah, the proclamation. The battle, the war was this about even kill, dead heat. They were having trouble getting more white people to come in and fight. At that point, it was clear it was about slavery, and many white Northerners were not inclined to free any slaves. So Lincoln had a dilemma. How are you going to prosecute this war with soldiers and you can't find none? So he had a ready ample supply of 200,000 strong, excellent shot black men in the South who knew how to hunt, who knew hard labor, who knew how to fight. So he was able to recruit through the Emancipation Proclamation to about 200,000 black soldiers to win the war. But therefore, by 1864, it was clear he had an ample supply to go ahead and defeat the Confederate Army. In Nashville, the battle had gone from Chattanooga to Murfreesboro, to Franklin, and finally to Nashville. So Nashville was the final crowning battle. And unlike the other battles, it didn't happen in the field. It didn't happen like Gettysburg in the middle of nowhere. It happened right inside the city. Very significant. And you could see that the way the battle lines were shaping up on December 15th, that General Thomas was going to use black troops to break the major strong point of the Confederate. Of course, at that point, black men was expendable. Okay, but that's what the black men did. They used their bodies at near the fairgrounds here in Nashville.
Cannon fodder, they call
right.
them.
And the most horrendous slaughter occurred where Overton High School is, where Peach Orchard Hill is. There is a marker there right now on Peach Orchard Hill, right there at Harding Road and 8th Avenue. I encourage the people to go see that marker, because that's where black men were slaughtered, and finally they broke the whole back of the Confederate Army. And on December 16th, the white troops came in and mopped up what was left of the Confederate positions about Shies Hill, in the Green Hills area. At that point, the Confederate Army ran down Franklin with black troops pursuing them, and that army was disbanded in January, a few months later. And of course, we all know in April, by that time, once the Battle of Nashville was lost, Lee had no reinforcement in Virginia. So the two major battles were, at that point, Sherman had marched all the way through Georgia. There was no resistance left in there. The only fighting army was Confederate Army in Tennessee and a ragtag army in Virginia. Once the Tennessee army was defeated by the black soldiers, then Lee had to surrender. Nashville, on December 15th and 16th, was the breaking point. And we were the major reasons with our blood that we broke the Confederate Army in Nashville on December 16th and 17th. And we lost more black soldiers died than died on either side of the Union or Confederate White Army. In other words, we suffered more casualties in 3 regiments than the entire 4-day battle had on either side of the Union or Confederate Army.
You know, a lot of folks don't seem to understand how very significant, excuse me, African-American participation was in this war. Speak to that again.
Well, it's something that until Clinton came into office, it was never recognized. When Lincoln was killed and they had the celebration of the victory of the Union Army in Washington, D.C., they did not invite a single regiment to parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. So it took from 1865 to Clinton was in office to recognize the black soldiers.
That they had actually fought in the war.
Exactly. They were a non-entity, Brother Hannah. They didn't exist. There were no medals. There were no movies. There was no statues. There was nothing in the history books about the 200,000 black men who wore the Union Army uniform and played major roles in several battles. And unlike the movie Glory, again now, the story of Nashville is that we were victorious. In the movie Glory, they did not defeat the army out there in South Carolina. But here in Nashville, it's a beautiful, it deserves a movie. It deserves a documentary. Ken Burns ought to come back and do a story. That's right. Because that way our children and white children and anybody can see there's a major part missing in the Civil War story, especially when it comes to Nashville, because this was a place that they had the hardest fighting black regiments. And the 13th Regiment played a major role. And believe it or not, there's a whole new set of young men that are reenactors of that 13th Regiment, USCT regiment right here in Nashville. And one of them was the model for the statue. His name is Bill Radcliffe. He was the actual model for the statue. And
that's already out there.
Yeah, he is a reenactor with the 13th U.S. CT Regiment. And we're so proud of what he's done in terms of recruiting people to to become reenactors. Because that way you can go to schools, you can go to churches, you can go to programs, you can see these men dressed in the old Civil War. They talk about the muskets, talk about what they ate, how they endured hardships, but they still fought and won. So we have spent also every year on December 15th paying tribute to the men who fought in the battle. We've never missed a year since '79.
Very good. Go and talk about that activity, some of the people that were involved in that kind of early recognition.
Mr. Kelso has gone on, and James Marsh has gone on, helped us put this tribute together every single year on December 15th. No matter what the weather is, we're at the cemetery at 12 noon on December 15th. That commemorates the Battle of Nashville. We lay a wreath, we have history tours, have a brief program to say thank you to the men who are buried there. We've been doing that with the Lynn Norris's group. We've been doing it with the Village. We've been doing it with many Boy Scouts. We've been doing it with a lot of fraternities and sororities who ask their recruits that they're going through the line to go out there and participate. So over these 7 years, we've had a lot of folks come out there and open their eyes up to the Battle of Nashville and the role played by black men.
And over the last 3 minutes, this statue that you have here is the culmination of many of your efforts. And what are some of the things that you'd like for folks to know who might wish to help support you? I think this is still an ongoing project, isn't it?
That's correct. We have raised the money to build the statue, to get it poured, the plaque on it, the granite marble, the foundation, the approval from the Veterans Administration. What's left now is to say thanks to all the sponsors, to give them some piece of artwork to say thanks, but more important, we have to maintain the statue so it will not oxidize and turn green. And even more important, we've got to put together a major publicity campaign so that if you come to Nashville and you're in a hotel downtown in Opryland, there'll be a brochure there in the lobby telling you this statue exists, how to get to it, and what it means. So we have lots of fundraising to do, and we want you to look at our organization's federal exempt number. You can send your money to 1215 9th Avenue North on 37208 Nashville, 1215 9th Avenue North. It's a tax deductible. We're federally exempt, certified organization. We will send your receipt back, acknowledging your gift, and listing you as a donor in all our publications. We have about $12,000 more to raise to accomplish that.
And so you're working hard over these last few months in terms of not only building the statue, but at least trying to create a fund so that you can maintain it. And you would like for as many people as might be watching this morning to be aware of that and help you. I think you mentioned earlier, somebody else mentioned earlier about the amount of contributions. It does not have to be $5,000.
No, it could be $5. It could be $5.
Anything that they wish to give.
That'll help us pay a lunch to a Boy Scout to go out and polish the statue up. Twice a year, you've got to put this special polish on that bronze. Otherwise, it turns an ugly green. And even though this is talking about St. Patrick's Day or whatever, we don't want to turn green. We want it to be nice and bronze for as long as we can keep it bronze. And we also want people to come out there and visit the statue. We deliberately made it a low statue on a very low pedestal so you could touch it. And the artist was Roy Butler, and we were proud of what he did. And the model was Bill Ratcliffe. But we have lots of folks like Ms. Ursery, Lynn Norris, people who helped me over the years pull this off.
Very
good.
So
thanks to them.
Very good. And of course, Brother Lillard, thanks to you for your effort in reference to this, because I know personally that you've been involved in not only this, but African Street Festival and a large number of other things. And we want to thank you for that. And of course, let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.